I'm Chris, 50, and for 25 years, I lived a profound lie. I believed my marriage to Amy, though sometimes dull, was built on unbreakable trust. I thought we were just navigating midlife, not teetering on an abyss. That delusion ended one morning, not with a bang, but with hushed whispers from my own daughters. I was stepping into my house, when Julie and Kate's tense voices drifted down from upstairs. They were talking about their mother, an app called Pure, about meeting men. That sound shattered everything. Could it be true? My wife, using a dating app. Meeting strangers. My daughters, my own flesh and blood, had suggested an open marriage, unknowingly handing her the blueprint for betrayal. My world didn't just crack, it imploded in those agonizing moments. Everything I knew unraveled in less than an hour. Amy, meanwhile, was likely still in our bed, probably dreaming, utterly unaware that her biggest secret had just been ripped wide open by her own children. Before we get into this, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if this story truly resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are right now. I couldn't sleep again. It was almost ritual by now, me on my back, eyes fixed on the streaks of streetlight that found their way through the blinds, my mind turning itself into knots. I'd stared at those dim lines so many nights that I practically had them memorized, the thin pale stripes that fell across the ceiling, broken by the shadow of the overhead fan. The clock glowed 2:03 a.m., then 2:10, each minute taunting me with how relentlessly time pushed on while I lay there wide awake, stewing in my own thoughts. The nauseous swirl in my stomach had become familiar, like a dark creature gnawing at my insides. She kept her back to me, but I sensed her stiffen. "It's 2 in the morning," she mumbled. "Not now." She slapped her palm onto the mattress in frustration. "Shut up," she hissed. "I can't handle you right now." Her sharp intake of breath was audible. She didn't say another word, just fled, leaving the door open behind her. A moment later I heard the guest room door slam and muffled sobbing. It prickled at my heart, but I was too furious to follow. I stared at the dark ceiling, fists clenched, trapped in my own brutal storm of suspicions and shame. Open marriage. The words banged around my skull like a loose pinball. My daughters had suggested it, and Amy had taken it to heart. The hush that followed was instant. I heard a frantic shuffle, then they both peered over the banister. Julie's face was pale, Kate's eyes glistened with tears. They descended slowly, as if approaching a firing squad. I crossed my arms. "No!" Kate exclaimed, tears running down her cheeks. "We just mentioned it, Dad. She said she'd talk to you first. We never thought she'd do it behind your back." They bolted, tears staining their faces, grabbing their bags and stumbling out the door. The air rang with the memory of my outburst, and I felt something inside me die a little. My own daughters, how could they do this, even unintentionally? It was like being stabbed one slow inch at a time. But Jerry wasn't done. He showed me screenshots of text exchanges. "This is from a user named Nacho Man, real name Brian. Looks like they only met in person once, but there was explicit messaging." That evening I spread the photos and transcripts across the dining table, a stark mosaic of betrayal. Amy came home, I heard her footsteps hesitate in the foyer, maybe she sensed I was there. With proof. She walked in, eyes flicking to the table, her face paled. "Oh, so this was my fault." My voice rose, and I waved the pictures in her face. "This is your idea of excitement? You realize our daughters told me about how they suggested an open marriage. They told me you said you'd talk to me first." Something in me snapped. "You always had a choice. You could have divorced me if you were that unhappy. Instead you gutted our marriage from the inside out." Julie nodded. "We feel terrible. The open marriage suggestion was supposed to be a stepping stone for you two to find a solution together. We didn't realize Mom would do it without you." They both started crying, heavy sobs that twisted my gut. I fought the urge to console them, my paternal instinct battling with my fury. Finally I mustered, I need time. Go back to school. Stay out of this for a while. Let me handle the fallout. Let's just say I'm having marital issues, I replied, voice strained. They coaxed it out of me, piece by painful piece. I didn't go into the exact detail about the open marriage concept or how my daughters had been involved, but I told them Amy had been unfaithful repeatedly and I was considering divorce. My parents were appalled, and quietly furious at Amy. My father kept murmuring, unbelievable, while my mother fretted over how I looked, like I hadn't slept in a week. Hard to call it private when you're hooking up in motels, I snapped. You humiliated me, so I don't really care about your social discomfort now. Oh, I have, I barked, and I see a man who's been lied to, a man who's done with your excuses. I'm filing for divorce. One morning, about a week into my stay, I heard a car outside. The next thing I knew there was a soft knock on the door. I opened it to find Julie and Kate, each looking tentative, clutching takeaway cups of coffee and a paper bag. I stared, not quite ready for a heart-to-heart, but they must have seen it in my eyes, because Kate immediately said, "We're sorry for ambushing you, Dad. We really want to talk." Julie's eyes filled with tears. We were stupid. We thought we were being modern, or helpful. On campus so many people talk about polyamory, open relationships, it seemed normal. The anger in me was ebbing, enough to let sorrow creep in. I cleared my throat, trying not to tear up. Look, I'm not banning you from my life forever, but I'm hurting. I can't just pretend everything's normal. Word got around in our social circle. I started receiving calls from mutual friends, some offering sympathy, others clearly fishing for gossip. One friend, Carol, confided that Amy had proudly talked about hooking up with a man who had a weird foot fetish. Another friend mentioned seeing Amy out at a bar with a heavily tattooed guy, laughing and flirting openly. It made me sick, but also hammered home the reality, she had stopped hiding. This was who she was now, or maybe who she'd always wanted to be. Natalie nodded. Understood. I'll draft up the papers. Her eyes blazed, and she took a step closer. Stop bringing that up. It's my life. I'm not sneaking around anymore. I tried not to dwell on what she would do next, probably another string of men from that app, another round of bar hopping. I'd heard she sold her share of the house and rented a swanky condo near downtown, close to the clubs and nightlife. She wanted to live out her version of freedom. Fine. Let her. I was done chasing illusions. Officially free. My wife Amy was asleep right beside me, sprawled in her typical unceremonious way, one leg protruding from beneath the sheets, an arm flung across a pillow, her hair tangled around her face. Normally I might have found it endearing, but lately I felt like there was an invisible line carved between us. Something about how she slept these days seemed staged, almost like she was purposely turning her back to me. It made me feel pathetically isolated. It's exactly now, I shot back. I'm not sleeping anyway. You're not giving me any peace of mind. I'm losing it here. Are you messing around? Is that why? I glared in the darkness, adrenaline coursing through me. Fine. Walk away again. Pretend none of this matters. The next morning I left the house before dawn, anything to avoid another hostile encounter. My eyes burned from lack of sleep and my nerves buzzed. I hit the gym with manic energy, pounding the treadmill, hoisting weights until my arms felt boneless. Somehow the physical pain helped distract me from the mental anguish. After showering, I glanced at my reflection in the locker room mirror. My hair, once a solid brown, was streaked with gray, lines etched around my eyes, and a trace of belly fat stubbornly clung to my frame. I was 50, soon to be 51, and I felt every bit of it. But what I saw most in that mirror was the gaunt fear in my face, the look of a man who suspected his wife of cheating and dreaded confirmation. Kate made a small whimpering sound. Now she's meeting men behind Dad's back. God, if he finds out, he's going to hate us. I feel sick. What the hell did I just hear? I glared at them, feeling a swirl of rage and heartbreak. Well, you see how that turned out, she's hooking up with random men. My own daughters inadvertently set this in motion. I can't believe it. That afternoon I met with Jerry, the private investigator I'd hired weeks ago, at a Greasy Spoon diner on the edge of town. Jerry was in his 60s, all lean muscle and wiry white hair, the kind of guy who'd been in the business for decades and seen everything, yet his eyes were heavy with sympathy as he waved me into the booth. I skimmed the cringeworthy texts. Brian, Nacho Man, you like it rough? I have interesting toys. I can bring a friend, if you want, group action. Amy, Amethyst 39, not sure yet, but hashtag YOLO. You only live once, right? Let's see if I'm feeling adventurous. What is this? She stiffened, looking both ashamed and defensive. I knew you'd never agree. You're so closed-minded, I just. She slammed her hand on the table. I felt I had no voice. You overshadow everything, always the final say. I needed to break free. I slowly turned to face them. You think that helps me right now? My voice is, I'm furious at your mother for cheating, and at you two for handing her the idea. Kate choked on a sob. But Dad, no. I spent the night on their sofa bed, staring at the ceiling. I felt safer than at home, but the heartbreak was unrelenting. The next morning I decided I'd go back to the house when Amy wasn't around to gather more of my belongings. Staying under the same roof with her felt impossible now. Her knuckles whitened around the phone. Do you enjoy seeing me vilified? Is that what this is about? For a moment her face crumpled, as though she might plead with me. Then, like a switch flipped, she sneered. Fine. Good luck finding someone who can endure your uptight, boring style. Maybe your next wife won't have to hire a personal trainer to learn new moves behind your back. Julie offered me one of the cups. We brought your favorite mocha latte. Kate nodded vehemently. We never wanted her to cheat on you. We thought if you were both in on it, it could resolve tension. But Mom just took it and ran without you. They both started crying softly, and I felt my chest tighten. Slowly I reached across the table, letting them hold my hands. I blinked back tears, feeling some fraction of my resentment thaw, replaced by regret that our family had crumbled so drastically. Sometimes I tried to remember the good times, our early years, our wedding, the birth of our daughters, but each memory felt overshadowed by the images of her new life. It was like the person I'd loved was replaced by a stranger who gloated on social media about living my best life. She posted photos at clubs, hashtags about #freedom, and pictures with men whose arms were wrapped around her waist. It was a dagger to my chest each time I glimpsed it. A few weeks after that we had the last major confrontation. I arrived at the old house to walk through it with a realtor. The plan was to discuss listing details. Amy was there, leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling her phone. She barely looked at me as the realtor walked around, making notes. When the realtor stepped outside to examine the backyard, Amy pushed off the counter, crossing her arms. I let out a low hiss. No, you've made it clear you're proud of it. Everyone sees your new lifestyle, foot lovings, YOLO, you only live once, and whatever else you brag about. Enjoy it while it lasts. I remained in the cottage a while longer. The for sale sign went up in front of our marital home, and prospective buyers came and went. My daughters occasionally checked in, worried about how I was coping. I still felt raw about their involvement, but time had blunted the edges of my anger. They were naive and misguided, not malicious. They tried to help in the strangest, most disastrous way possible, and I knew they were suffering guilt of their own. I'd been married to Amy for 25 years, but the past month or so had shifted everything, and that shift, that nagging sense that something was off, fed my insomnia like gasoline on a fire. She had changed, not in the usual midlife crisis sense, not in subtle ways. She had changed in bed. Our old routine, once a stable if not thrilling script, was suddenly tossed aside. She'd become adventurous, intense, aggressive even. She tried new positions we'd never discussed, touched me in ways she used to dismiss with a disgusted shrug, and moaned like she was auditioning for a movie. You'd think I'd be thrilled, and part of me was, at first, but the abruptness raised red flags the size of billboards. Where had she learned this? Why now, after 2.5 decades of fairly predictable sex? My suspicious mind offered a single gut-wrenching possibility: she must be copying someone else's moves, or at least practicing for them. It sounded insane, but once I latched onto it, I couldn't shake the notion. She rolled onto her back, hair spilling across the pillow. "You're being paranoid," she snapped. "Why can't it be that I finally wanted something different?" She grabbed a spare pillow, got up, and stomped across the room. The sliver of light from the hallway revealed her tight jaw and furious eyes. "I'm going to the guest room," she said, voice shaking. "Enjoy your lonely night." I had to swing by the house to grab some work papers. I steeled myself, hoping Amy would be gone. When I parked in the driveway, her car was nowhere in sight, thank God. I stepped inside, my mind already drifting to the day's tasks, when I heard voices floating down from upstairs. My daughter's voices. That stopped me cold. Julie was 21, Kate was 20, both in college. They rarely dropped by unannounced, but maybe Amy had summoned them. I lingered at the foot of the stairs, straining to hear. Their voices were tense, hushed. Something inside me shattered. My own children had, intentionally or not, handed their mother the blueprint for this betrayal. I swallowed hard, pushing back the fury so I could continue listening. Julie tried to speak, but Kate blurted, "Dad, it's not what you think." They both tried to approach me, arms outstretched. "We're sorry," Julie whispered. "Please, we love you, we never wanted this." "Chris," he said, his tone grave. "I've collected quite a bit more since we last spoke." He opened a folder, revealing stacks of photos, phone logs, and typed-up transcripts. My stomach clenched. The top photo showed Amy stepping out of her car wearing a tight dress I didn't recognize. Another showed her entering a motel off the highway, arms linked with some bald man. The time stamps were just days apart. I forced myself not to look away. I felt physically ill. This was my wife, a woman who had once crinkled her nose at the mere mention of anything beyond vanilla sex, now telling strangers, "You only live once." I tapped the papers. Your side hobby, apparently. A thorough breakdown of who, when, and where. Derek. Luke. Brian, aka Nacho Man, recognized them. I cut her off. So you took an idea they mentioned, and instead of having an adult conversation, you jumped onto an app for casual flings. Then you lied to me for weeks. You broke everything, I retorted. Congratulations. They looked stricken. Kate's eyes brimmed with tears. Dad, we only had Mom's perspective, she said. You were emotionally distant, that you never listened. We believed her. We thought you wouldn't even consider any new approach. I said firmly, I can't look at you without thinking about how this started. I need space. When I got home the next day, I found Amy pacing in the living room, phone clutched in her hand. She whipped around to face me when I stepped inside. I let out a sharp breath. Spare me. You're strutting around as if you're proud. You told the girls you were bored, you told them about hooking up with men from an app. I have no sympathy for your poor me routine. The comment stung so badly I almost lunged. Instead I shoved past her, grabbing a stack of papers off the table and heading for the front door. She flung it open for me, practically shoving me out, with one last glare, as it slammed behind me. I realized I felt a strange combination of fury and relief, as though the finality was settling in. I accepted it wearily, stepping aside to let them in. The living space was cramped, so we all hovered by the small dining table. I cleared my throat. I said I needed space, I began. A weary sigh escaped me. You see how badly that turned out. Julie spoke through her tears. We'll give you whatever time you need, Dad. We promise. Eventually I sat down with an attorney named Natalie, an old colleague of Stacy's specializing in complicated divorces. I brought her the PI's evidence, bank statements, everything. She leafed through the details, nodding grimly. We're in an at-fault state, she explained. Infidelity is a strong ground that can affect alimony and property division. Are you ready for a fight? Because it could get nasty. We need to talk about the house, she said curtly. I'm not cleaning it. You're better off hiring professionals. She scowled. You're so judgmental. At least I'm not playing victim while digging for sympathy from everyone we know. A friend of mine, half drunk, had once joked, yeah, that's a big giveaway. If your wife goes from boring to superstar in the sack, check her phone. He'd meant it light-heartedly, but I took it to heart. And then I started noticing more. She had new outfits, she wore perfume to the supermarket, she rarely let her phone out of her sight, and she'd changed the lock code. I felt the swirling dread intensify each day. I caught myself anxiously scanning her face, trying to spot guilt or secrets. Each night I replayed every new quirk in bed, every unusual moan, every faraway look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. My throat felt parched and my heart thudded uncomfortably. I felt myself trembling. Because you always acted disgusted by certain things. Now you do them like you're reading from an XXX movie star manual. Don't try to gaslight me. I know you. This is more than just being open-minded all of a sudden. I couldn't stop myself. Don't forget to bring your phone, in case one of your side pieces texts, I sneered. Mom is going way too far, Kate was saying. She told me about using that Pure app to meet men. She said it's easier to hide from Dad than I ever imagined. I didn't think she'd do this. Julie sighed heavily. We just wanted to fix their relationship. Mom said she was bored, that Dad never listened to her. We figured some couples do an open thing, they talk it through. We assumed they'd talk it through. I held up a hand, cutting her off. Don't you dare downplay it. I just heard you two talking about telling your mother to go for an open marriage. You gave her a nudge toward that Pure app, right? I couldn't look at them. My eyes focused on the stairs, the carpet, anything else. My anger boiled. Get out, I muttered, voice taut. I can't stand the sight of you right now. Jerry tapped the first picture. This here is Derek, one of the men she's been seeing. They met through Pure. He and your wife met 3 different times, once at a local cafe, once at the motel, and once at his apartment. Jerry gently closed the folder when he saw my face contort. I'm sorry, he said, but I wanted you to know the extent. Amy's mouth opened, but no words came out. She finally choked, this is an invasion of privacy. Amy's eyes flashed. I had to. You'd have shut me down, just like you always do. And I was drowning in boredom, feeling stuck in the same routine for decades. Trembling, she grabbed her purse and fled upstairs. I sank onto a chair, staring at the photos, feeling as if a bomb had gone off and I was sitting in the wreckage. A bitter laugh escaped me. So your brilliant solution was for her to find random sexual partners. That's progressive, right? They lingered, tears streaming, but I turned away. They left, and the door clicked shut behind them. The air felt oppressively still. Afterward I collapsed on the couch, hands over my face, wishing I could rewind the clock 1,000 times. Did you tell your parents? She demanded, eyes blazing. They've been blowing up my phone, leaving messages, calling me a tramp, saying I've disgraced the family. She advanced on me, eyes glistening with tears. You don't understand how stifling our marriage was. You never listened to my needs. Everything had to be your way, and I was desperate enough to go behind your back with half a dozen men. A close friend of mine, Stacy, who was also my boss, owned a small lakeside cottage about 30 minutes away. When I vented to her about the situation, she offered the place as a refuge for a while. I arrived there with a couple of suitcases, still reeling from the confrontation. The cottage was cozy but old-fashioned, with creaking floorboards and a simple layout, a living area, a tiny kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom. A large window overlooked a sparkling lake framed by pine trees. Despite my tumultuous emotions, I felt a momentary calm seeing the water gently ripple in the breeze. Kate set the bag of pastries down, wringing her hands. We know, but we can't just ignore you. You're our dad and we see how much pain this has caused. They exchanged guilty looks. Kate ventured, Dad, we love you. We love Mom too, but we know she messed up. We never wanted you to feel betrayed by us. Kate sniffled. We just want you to know we do love you, and we'll be here if you want us. I just want it to end, I said, but I also don't want her walking away with my life savings. She's the one who lied, who used an app for hookups. I managed a bitter chuckle. You're a real estate agent yourself, or did you forget? Couldn't you handle that? My voice was dangerously calm. Don't flatter yourself. People see the truth, that you betrayed me. They can draw their own conclusions. I swallowed and whispered her name in the dark. Amy. She gave the slightest twitch but otherwise her breathing remained steady. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she was pretending. Either way, her refusal or inability to talk about it ignited a spike of anger in me. I turned onto my side, trying to push it down but failing miserably. Finally I raised my voice. Amy, come on, I know you're not out cold. She stirred, letting out a low groan of annoyance. That was my answer, she was awake but didn't want to engage. My pulse spiked. I hated the idea that she was ignoring me on purpose, especially when I felt like I was about to explode. She threw an arm over her forehead. Oh my God, Chris, enough. I am too tired for this. She froze, her silhouette tensed. You'll regret that, she whispered, tears lacing her tone. You're such a... My blood turned to ice. I inched closer, pressing my back to the wall. Kate's voice wavered. She never told Dad. She just jumped into it. She uses that dating app to find guys, to get that excitement. This is so messed up. They looked at each other in distress. Julie swallowed hard. Dad, we never told her to cheat on you secretly. We just said maybe an open arrangement could help, if you both agreed. Mom was miserable, complaining you wouldn't try anything new. We thought if you did it together, she wouldn't feel so trapped. Dad, Kate pleaded, sobbing. My head pounded. Amy, at that man's apartment, for how long, doing what? I tried to swallow, but my mouth was chalk dry. Thank you, Jerry. Send me the final bill. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. Right. My wife hooking up with multiple men is my invasion of your privacy. And sleeping with random guys behind my back fixed that? I asked, voice trembling with rage. You let them do things you never even tried with me. That's the part one can't forgive, that you unlocked a new side of yourself for them and never thought to talk to me. A couple of days later I was at the house gathering papers for a lawyer. The tension between Amy and me was now at nuclear levels, but she wasn't there that morning, just as well. I heard the front door open and my daughters calling my name. Dad, you here? Julie sighed, tears on her cheeks. We didn't literally say go cheat. We said if you both agreed, maybe it would help. A friend's parents tried it, and apparently it worked. We're sorry. That night I fled to my parents' place, a modest home on the other side of town. They were in their 70s and had always been supportive, though we weren't a family of oversharers. Still, seeing me show up with a suitcase startled them. I dropped my keys on the counter with a clatter. Yes, I told them. They asked why I left. I told them the truth. My tone was pure venom. If it was so bad, you should have left first. The first night I barely slept again, but at least I was out of the war zone. I paced the small living room, phone in hand, ignoring calls from Amy. My daughters texted every few hours, alternating between apology and desperation. I answered only with curt messages, "I'm safe." "Need time." "Yeah," Julie added. "We wanted to see if there's anything we can do to fix, well, everything." "You might not have wanted it," I replied, "but that's what happened." Every time I think of the fiasco, I remember you two telling her about this ridiculous app. That pure thing is basically a meat market for no-strings sex. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They squeezed my hands, then quietly stood. After awkward hugs, they departed, leaving me alone with a storm of emotions. I sank onto the couch, letting the tears come. As furious and betrayed as I felt, I couldn't deny that I missed my daughters. Natalie tapped a pen against the table. "If we go hard, we can likely secure a favorable settlement. However, if her lawyer counters with claims of emotional neglect or controlling behavior, it can drag on. It's up to you how aggressive we get." She rolled her eyes. "I deal with selling property, not scrubbing it. Besides, I'm done bending over backward. I don't owe you anything." The air felt suffocating. We stood there, a few feet apart, radiating mutual fury. Just then the realtor returned, a forced smile on her face, as she tried to pretend she hadn't overheard. We stepped away from each other, silent, as she discussed potential listing prices. The tension was so thick it was painful. By the time she left, I grabbed my car keys and stormed out without a word. Amy didn't stop me. "Why have you changed in bed?" I asked loudly. "I've known you for a quarter century, and overnight you're someone else. Are you copying something you saw online, or is it something you learned with someone else?" My anger flared hotter. "That's convenient. I guess your energy only appears when you're trying out new tricks in bed. The rest of the time you're exhausted, especially when I want honest answers." Before she could finish, I cut her off, practically spitting my words. "I hired a private investigator to watch you. I'll know everything soon enough." Julie's voice trembled with guilt. "We kind of suggested it, remember, the open marriage idea? We told her it might spice things up, but I never thought she'd run off hooking up with random guys." I couldn't stand it anymore. My head spun with a mix of hurt, betrayal, and confusion. Keeping my composure was like balancing on a razor's edge. I stepped away from the stairs and called up, my voice booming in the silence. "Julie! Kate! Come down here, now." My heart hammered. "Do you realize how twisted this sounds? You're my daughters. You basically gave your mother the green light to screw around. Go." I roared, the force of my voice echoing off the walls. "I need space. Go back to campus. Do whatever you want. Just leave me alone." He shuffled the next set of photos. This man, Luke, from Massachusetts. They apparently chose a spot halfway to meet for dinner, then spent hours at a bed and breakfast. I followed them until they checked in. 4 hours later they left separately. He nodded. I shoved my way out of the booth and stumbled to my car, the folder under my arm, my entire world spinning. She glared, tears welling in her eyes. "I told you I needed excitement, Chris." I tried dropping hints. She bit her lip, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me differently, or worse, refuse me." I felt like I had no choice. I stiffened, memories of their betrayal still raw. They edged into the living room, their faces drawn with worry. Kate spoke first, voice shaking. "Dad, we're so sorry. We've barely slept. We never wanted to cause all this." Anger and heartbreak warred inside me. "I'm not sure I can forgive you," I said bluntly. "I love you both, but I can't just forget that you basically validated her stepping out on me." "Chris, what's wrong?" my mom asked, eyes wide with concern. Her face twisted in rage. "You had no right to turn them against me. This is our private matter." She shook her head, tears finally spilling. "I messed up, okay? But you're not a saint either. Look in the mirror." In the following days I tried to settle into a routine. I had Zoom meetings for work, conference calls, and emails. Whenever I felt the walls closing in, I walked along the shore or rented a kayak. The physical exertion offered a brief escape from the swirl of bitterness in my head. Yet whenever my mind drifted, images of Amy and her friends flickered like a horror slideshow, the texts about #YOLO, you only live once, the mention of a guy with a foot fetish who praised her arches, the flirting in that bed and breakfast. Each memory made my stomach clench. My anger still simmered, but a chunk of it had worn down into exhaustion. I gestured for them to sit. "I don't know what to say to you," I began quietly. "You're my daughters, but you pushed your mother toward a solution that didn't involve me. How do I move past that?" Julie hung her head. "We know. She told us, after the fact, that it was easy and discreet. It makes us sick to think she used something we mentioned." The weeks that followed felt like a slow slog through emotional quicksand. I returned to the marital home now and then, mostly to check the mail, grab documents, or meet with potential real estate agents about selling the place. Amy was rarely there when I showed up, and that suited me fine. On the few occasions we crossed paths, tension crackled like a live wire. One time she was heading out just as I arrived, dressed in a short, tight skirt. She didn't say a word, only flicked me a glance of annoyance before disappearing. Part of me wondered which man she was meeting this time. I pressed my fingers to my temples. "I'm furious, but I'm also tired. Let's just aim for fair, not for revenge. Let me keep my retirement intact, and she can have her share of the house sale." My temper spiked. "Oh yeah, I forgot, you're too busy hooking up with men from Pure to worry about standard upkeep." The day the divorce finalized was a cold, gray morning. Amy and I sat silently side by side, our lawyers doing most of the talking. The judge asked a few perfunctory questions, then made it official with a gavel. Just like that, 25 years of marriage ended in a bland, curt legal proceeding. Outside the courthouse we parted ways without so much as a handshake. I watched her climb into her car, she avoided eye contact, face set. I felt a weird cocktail of relief, sorrow, and bitterness swirl in my chest. I thought about the day we'd walked out of a different building, newly married, everything ahead of us. Now this was how it concluded, silent, cold, irreparable.